Hello, my friends. Eric Feltus here, life coach, speaker, actor, and host of The Great Unbecoming. This is a show about stories of unlearning. What did you let go of in order to become the person you are today? And what did you gain and learn as well? This is a show about letting go of stories that no longer serve us and stepping into our own authenticity. It's about unbecoming what society says you should be and remembering who you are and who you are meant to be. So sit back, relax, and welcome to The Great Unbecoming. Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of The Great Unbecoming, and happy Pride Month. I am so excited to introduce my guest, who I have not had the pleasure of meeting in person, but I've known and admired from afar through the gifts of social media. Mm-hmm. Coach Yeamah is the founder of Confidently Queer coaching program. She's an author, coach, and international speaker devoted to empowering LGBTQ plus people to live fully authentic lives while deepening their spiritual connection with God. With over 10 years of experience, Yeamah is a trusted resource for those seeking guidance and support on their journey. And welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
I am doing great, Eric.
Yay. It's so good to see you. Coach Yeamah and I, we did an Instagram Live about maybe a year ago or so. And I love you. I love your work. I love what you do. And I'm wondering, before we start, if I can share a text message that I got from one of my clients. Would that be okay?
That would be amazing.
I love talking about the work that we're doing in our 10-week program that's designed to help gay, bi, trans people who identify as male free themselves from shame. It's so similar to the work that you do. And so this comes from Tim Lenko, who's actually in my ongoing leadership program. And Tim says, he texts me, he goes, "Eric, your ability to ask insightful questions and promote opportunities for reflection have been such a gift. I couldn't be more grateful for how much I've processed with you and the actually resilient confidence that I've been able to cultivate with you in your shame-free community. Thank you." And I'm so proud of Tim. I'm so proud of the growth that he has. Being a part of his transformational journey over the past year has been such a gift. And one reason I love this, and it's so on par for what we're talking about, is he talks about gaining confidence through community, which I think is such a big part of Pride Month and about the queer community.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, Yeamah, that you have so many other similar stories about your own community and the confidence that your own clients gain throughout their work with you.
Mm-hmm. It is, I think, one of the most understated benefits of getting to work with people, and what we're all actually seeking after is that certainty, but it really is that confidence that we can live fully as who we are without being swayed by the opinions, the judgments from other people, whether they be loved ones or strangers.
Yeah. And you appear to be such a confident person.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, have you always been this way? Have you always been as confident as you are today?
According to my mom, I've been this confident and more. Okay. I've always had a mouth on me. I've always been someone who was a fighter for justice and for rights of people. I've always been the one to stand up to bullies or, stand in the way of someone who's trying to overtake someone who doesn't have equal power or ability as them. So I've always been that person, and very fierce about it. But have I always been confident in my sexuality? No, I have not.
There's that piece.
Yes, I have not. Yeah. I was confident in everything else.
I already love this conversation, and I love that you're able to admit that I haven't been confident about a piece of me. And when we focus on a piece of you, it's almost like having a toothache. Like it's all you can think about, right? And so the reason I love this conversation, and the reason it's such a valuable conversation for our listeners, is because I think people see people like you and me on social media, and they think they're so confident. I will never be that way, so I'm not even going to try. Yeah. So to help reach those people, I want to zoom out and kind of rewind. Coach Yeamah, can you go back to the time when you were less confident about your sexuality? And I want to humanize you, because I think that when we humanize our stories, it makes others recognize that it's possible for them as well, regardless of where they're at. So I will let you take take it wherever you want to go. Go back as far as you want to go, and then I will happily, rudely interrupt if I have questions or the takeaways I want to share.
Not a problem. So in I'm just joking. We're not going to go back to when we were born. I was born.
You can.
But I knew for me...
In the year 1946, when the word homosexual was added to the Bible.
Think about it. Sicily, 19 now. When I was 13, I realized that I had attractions to both boys and girls. And at the time, I was in a home with my older sister, and I asked her, she was only 2 years older than me, and I said, can I like both? And she said, no, you have to pick one. And so at that time, I was like, okay, well, she's my older sister. She knows more. So I just picked one. I picked the guy and kept it moving. And
you can't double dip.
And so at the age of 19, though, I fell in love with a woman. And I went about that relationship very insecure, very unsure, because it was just a couple of years before that I was saved radically and fell in love with Jesus and was so about the church and loved my church community. And then I went to college, met this young lady, fell in love, and it was very much at odds with how I grew up. Although it's so interesting that I never really explicitly heard the message that gay people were going to hell. It wasn't a conversation where we had, but some way I knew that it didn't feel like what God would want for me. And the thing about it is my partner at the time also felt the same way. And so here's these two Black Christian girls who love each other and who also really love God. And we chose God in that relationship and ended up breaking up. And so I was very insecure about that whole situation. I would pray and ask God, and then got to the book of Romans and got to 126 and 27 and said, oh, this is why it feels unnatural, because it's in the Bible. Of course, it's not supposed to happen. And then I hadn't been sexual with a woman. And so that felt very weird. And I said, well, if it feels weird, that must be that it's because it's wrong, right? Like that must be.
I already want to pause you, if you don't mind. Already so many rich takeaways, because I think what you're describing is how so many of us have a hard time differentiating the voice of God from the voice of shame. And we think if this feels wrong or unnatural, it can't be because of the intricacies of sex or because I haven't learned how to say no or use my words. And it definitely can't be just because society says it's wrong and I've been brainwashed to believe that it's wrong. It must be the voice of God. And then I can open this book and it's justified right there. I think we're going to get to it and we're going to unpack it. I know you and I do the same work where we can put thoughts on trial and help people to recognize that's not God. That's just ingrained beliefs that you haven't been able to shake yet. But when you don't have that sort of support that you and I give people, it's so easy for you to open the book, the Bible, and be like, oh, see, it says so right here. I am right that this is wrong, right?
And I love that you say that, because sexuality is so complex. Not complicated, it can be, but it's complex, right? And being in physical sexual acts with other human beings is a complex thing that maybe we don't all do it, but maybe we've been there and it didn't feel, even with a heterosexual partner, if I was with a man, that it would feel awkward. I wouldn't automatically default to this feels awkward because I'm not supposed to be doing this because it's unnatural. But it defaulted to that with that young lady, my first partner, because of that. The message in society was very much at that time, this is wrong. And then being legally married to the same gender was so illegal at that time. I'm a little bit older. And so it was still a topic in society. And so all of these political influences, the influences from the church, which now we know is the same thing, but all of these influences come together and they have very personal effects on our lives. And so for me, that's where that was. And she was in the same place. And so that relationship dissolved. And my decision moving forward was, well, God doesn't want me to be with a woman romantically, but that doesn't mean I can't have fun in the meantime, right? And so although that first sexual interaction was like very awkward and weird, I still, in the back of my mind at 19, 20, thinking, well, I can believe in God and like give my life to God later. And I'm just going to have fun right now. Like, I'm just going to go and do whatever I need to do and whatever I want to do. And so I got pretty good at the sexual part later and didn't feel so awkward after a while, right?
Yeah.
But as I progressed into adulthood, graduated college, had a really traumatic emotional event that caused me and pushed me to that relationship that I had in the beginning with God to find that peace. And I came to that relationship with God with all of the old ideas that I still had about God not approving of me being queer, definitely not approving of any sort of fornication. So entered into my 7 years of celibacy, no men, no women, completely devoted to God because I was desperate after this peace of mind that I didn't have at the time. And it was in that process where I fell in love with God again and fell in love with Jesus again. And it wasn't a relationship based on fear. It was a relationship based on desire and love. And coming towards the end of that, I fell in love with another woman. And then I said,
Pause.
yes.
What you said, I have to rewind and I need you to say it slower. Say that line about fear versus love.
My relationship with God grew or transformed, whatever you want to say, from a place of fear, of desperation, into a relationship of desire and love where I wanted to hang out with God and I enjoyed hanging out with God. And it wasn't because it started off as a desperate need for God, for the peace of God. That relationship had to be built outside of church. And so this relationship was very personal. It was mine. And I still enjoy that relationship till this day. And so when I went to Bible college as a continuation of my dedication to God and fell in love with a woman within like the first couple of months, which I didn't realize I was in love with her at the time. I thought it was just, I found my best friend that I've been praying for. I found this woman who I really cared about, and it wasn't sexual at all. So, and being gay it's my testimony. I've moved on past that. Right. And then eventually realized that I actually was very much deeply in love with this woman, and then had to have that conversation with God about what happened. Right. They said that if I worshiped you and fell in love with you and went out on dates with you and enjoyed you and all of this stuff, that all of these emotions and these attractions would go away. I'm filled with the Spirit. I pray for people. I prophesy. I lay hands. People are healed. What is this? Why isn't this? Because at the time, it was taught to me that being queer was a spirit, right? And so how can the Spirit of God exist in the same spirit as something who is not supposed to be of God, right? Like how...
Right. I'm doing everything right. I'm praying. I'm healing others. All of the things. We have this idea that love is conditional, right? Like, first of all, I love what you say about fear versus love. I love how it wasn't, oh, I'm going to hold God off. It's like, oh no, I'm not doing this because I'm afraid of hell. I'm afraid of judgment. I'm doing this because I want to do it. And I think, listener, if you don't identify as Christian, that's okay. You're very welcome here in this space. You're very affirmed in this space. Whether you believe in God, Jesus, Christianity or not, the foundation of this conversation is differentiating fear from love. I think that words have a very limited, they're very finite, but love is very infinite. So if these words are a little triggering, that's okay. We've been there. What I want you to get from this more than anything is if it comes from a place of love, follow that. So you follow that. But I think, if I'm hearing you right, we still believe in this like conditional form of love. Like, I did all of these things. Why am I not, quote unquote, healed from this, from my sexuality? Did I get that right?
I don't know if it'll be a conditional form of love because I believe God loved me. I never really believed people were going to go to hell for being gay because it didn't make sense to me. Because if Jesus came to save the world, right, and the only reason why we would go to hell would be not to believe in Jesus, like, murderers weren't going to hell because they were murderers. They would be going to hell because they were not believing in Jesus. That's the message that I received in the Bible college and the grace ministry that I was a part of.
That's what you believed.
Right.
Sure.
That's what I believe. So I didn't believe I was going to go to hell. What I believed was I believe somebody was lying to me is really what it was, right? Because it's not possible that I can love this woman and still be doing the things that I'm doing. And I'm telling you that I'm a Christian, like, I'm still in relationship with God, because the message also was gay people can't be Christian, right? Like, if you're gay, it's because you've thrown away your desire to know God and you're running in the other direction because you are at war with God. And that wasn't the truth. That wasn't true for me, right? I was very much in relationship with God and fell in love with this woman. And so my mind always goes back, because I'm a lover of truth, to who's lying to me. Because how is it possible that I can love this woman and still have this very godly friendship in that time, right? Godly friendship with her and love her still and have this attraction. And so that started my journey with the Lord, and asking hard questions that I hadn't asked before, because it just never came up, right? It was just like, oh, I'm not dealing with men. I'm not dealing with women. I'm waiting for God to bring my husband. Yes, I'm still maybe find this person attractive, but I'm not entertaining those thoughts. I'm like very much focused. This is my calling. This is what, like, I'm one track, 100% all the way in, going like straight forward. And it's in Bible college that I meet this person. I fall in love with them. And so it felt like,
because isn't it funny? It's like we try to avoid, right? You're one track, because in a way you were avoiding that truth, right? You're a truth seeker, but you were avoiding that piece of you. So it's funny how God's like, fine, fine. You're going to avoid this. I'm going to put it right in your face so you can't do anything about it.
Yes. And so it was it was a beautiful awakening to deeper conversations with God. Because I had other relationships where it's like, oh, maybe this guy's my husband, you know, because I'm bisexual, so I'm not lesbian. So it didn't feel too much like an avoidance of like, it's not happening, because I still was very much attracted to men. And so it just felt like, oh, I'll just, again, back to 13, I'll just choose one and go this way. Right. But I'm set up, right? I fall in love with who I fall in love with. I don't really care what your genitals look like. Right. And so that's what happened at the time. And the conversations with God honestly began with, I don't know what's going on. Someone's lying to me. And if I go and tell anybody else in this world that I'm in right now, I will get somehow penalized, somehow been prayed for to be delivered. And I know I don't need to be delivered of anything. I prayed for other people. Like, the Spirit of God is in me. And so I don't need to be delivered. I need to figure this thing out with just me, you and me, God. Right. And so I just started doing whatever again that I wanted to do. I'm like, you'll catch me later. I'm going to go have some fun, because this doesn't make sense. These people have been lying to me all this time. I love this woman. I know that it's pure. I know that it's from you. I didn't doubt that. And I think that's what the difference was. I didn't feel like it was a demonic spirit. I knew very much that this relationship was so pure and beautiful, and that this love was so pure and beautiful, that somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that these people were lying to me, and it wasn't God. Right. And so I never ran away from God. Not to say people who run away from God is like a problem, but because my relationship was built personally with God based on love and desire and wanting to be with God, I didn't run from God. It was the other people. Because if someone's lying to me, God's not a liar. So it has to be these people who told me this. Right. And so I started a little bit of a, rebellion, had my little bit of fun, right? Did what I had to do and had a great time. And I met another woman that I ended up being in a relationship with, who was also Christian, and was her first relationship, and had an opportunity to witness that everything I thought I knew about being queer was not true. So in my understanding of it, which it made sense to me when they said, oh, this spirit or these desires come from someone who has been sexually abused as a child. That's my story. And so I said, oh, that makes sense. Or someone who's been very promiscuous as a young person. Oh, well, that's me. That makes sense. Someone who didn't have a mom in the home. I didn't have a mom in the home. And so all of these markers made sense for me, and was almost kind of like a validation of like, oh, this is where this is coming from, because there was no other explanation. Wow. And then I met this woman who had none of those things, never been sexually abused, was a virgin when I met this person, mom and dad still together 40 years later, all of these different things, has been serving God, waiting for her husband for over 40 years. And she was queer. And so God said, now let's have this conversation for real. Right. And so it was in that relationship of both of us seeking after God, knowing that what we felt was real and that it wasn't against the will of God, but we needed understanding. And so it was in this relationship, a lot of my understanding came, and then my own time with God of seeking and just diving deep into the Bible, because I was very much a Bible literalist. If I didn't see it in black and white, I didn't believe it. right? And so I went through the Bible to find out what was going on. And it was in a personal, private relationship with me and God when God said, when are you going to finally just accept it? Like, accept yourself, that I made you this way and this is your superpower. And I said, sure, let's do it. But it was because God called me to the work that I'm doing now. And I couldn't do the work that I'm doing now without stepping fully, confidently into who I am. Because the truth was, 10 years before that moment, in my early 20s, God called me to this work. And I said no, because I thought God was calling me to tell gay people that they were sinners. And I said, I'm not doing that because I love my friends. I'm not doing this. And so I said no. So however God needed to take me through, God took me through that process until I was able to fully give 100% yes to it. And so my confidence didn't come from a pastor, a preacher, or somebody else outside validating me. It came from that personal relationship with God, and to understand that God wanted to talk to me and God wanted to have a conversation, having that supernatural encounter with God, that nobody can tell me anything. Like, I heard what God told me, right? And so that's the work that I do with my clients. Like, you can read all the books you want. There's Google, there's YouTube, you can get all the information. But because what you really want to do is ask God directly. So
let me ask a question about that, because you mentioned that you're a literalist, which I take to mean you take it in the Bible. It's black and white. It says this in this book. Therefore, it must be truth. So how has the radical acceptance and celebration of your queerness affected the way you view the Bible and your relationship with the Bible?
I've been able to see the Bible as wisdom and ancient truth, but not necessarily all of the things in there coming directly from God, right? And so for me, before I got to the queer acceptance of myself, I started understanding, and this was the beginning of my, I guess we call it deconstruction now, but the beginning of my deconstruction, where I'm in this grace ministry and we're preaching salvation, but that's not what Jesus told us to go preach. Jesus told us to preach the kingdom. And so when I got that revelation, I was like, wait a minute, we're not even doing what the Bible says. And so that was initially like, oh, we've missed it. This is what we should be talking. We should be talking about the kingdom. So by the time the queer stuff came, I knew that I got the understanding that there was distance between how we were operating in our faith and what the Bible was actually saying. Right. And so when I started now to go and look deep into like tithing, I mean, all of the sacred cows of evangelical Christian grace ministry, and started to look at it, and I started to see the holes of what was happening and seeing the very human effect of how we look at the Bible on these words, and start to realize that we actually have idolized the Bible above God. And so once that revelation started to hit, right, and it's like, okay, God, I'm going to start going, like, me and you need to start for real, like reading this Bible together. And you need to start showing me in these parts what's happening here. When did this get inserted? Is this even part, like reading to listen for the voice of the writing? And so now it's like I've become also an historian, because now I'm looking at where did these scriptures come from? Who wrote it? When did they write it? And then before even the queer thing too, when I realized that the books of the Bible are not in the New Testament, are not in order. And that I think Galatians was the first book to be written. Like, nobody in Bible college told me that. And so and then again, I started to feel lied to. I don't like being lied to, if you guys haven't noticed, right? If you're lying to me, we're going to have a problem. And so it's like all of these little things that I realized that were missing in the message, and that we were not experiencing the fullness of having this spiritual relationship with Creator, with divine. And so my Bible literalist view started to be pulled apart into just a historical, like landing in the history of where all of this is coming from. And then deconstructing had to come with decolonizing as well. And so now it's just like, okay, where were these influenced by the gender or the race or the ethnicity of the writers of this, right? And so now this full, beautiful view of, it's not full yet, because obviously I'm still learning, but just coming to this place of allowing God to be bigger than the Bible was a really big stepping stone for me to really step into my confidence, especially in what I do with my clients.
Wow.
Yeah.
Full circle, we're back to
Yes.
confidence. What, to me, deconstruction is, I always say deconstruction is kind of like an unraveling of a sweater. If you pull at a snag and you start to unravel, you can't really stop until all you have is yarn, and then you can start to put it back to a sweater that actually suits you. You're absolutely right. When we don't take into historical context, it's very easy, as an example, for us to think that Leviticus is saying that, man shall not lie with man specifically means that homosexuality is wrong, but we're not taking into consideration the fact that this was about population, about growth. Men, don't spill your seed, don't waste your seed with another man, because we need you to impregnate women, right? Does that mean today that the only sacred marriages are heterosexual marriages where men are constantly impregnating women? Well, some people do believe that, right? And yet we have 8 billion people on this planet. So maybe we're missing the mark, just as an example.
Somewhere in there. And I think when I looked back at the history of it as well, it really became an understanding of maybe it's not so much homophobia that's in the Bible. It's patriarchy and how, and the I don't want to say hate, but the disdain of femininity. Because in that culture at the time, and if you really read the Bible, there was another god that they were always trying to get them to stop worshiping, which was the feminine god, the goddess, right? And so it was, a lot of these laws were written in opposition to that view of God as something or being that was feminine. And so there was a disdain for that, right? To make things patrilineal and get the patriarchy to come back up. Well, not come back up, because they were creating it, right? To really set up this structure that we have now, this rigid heterosexuality that's going on.
Yes.
All of that, though, is easy when you look at it and you study it, to have all of the tightness in our chest that I know for me used to come up when it's like, I'm reading the Bible and I'm like landing upon a mine, it's blowing up in my face. But when you have the context of it and you see that, no, it's not really about men lying with men. They don't want any man acting like a woman. And that's that, right? And it wasn't about so much like, we don't want men loving men. It was like, don't be a woman. You can be anything you want in this world, but don't be a woman, right? I mean, we made the reason why the entire human race is where it is right now because of a woman, right? We all can't wait to get to heaven to talk to Eve, right? So...
Well, and if you look at the historical context of the intersectionality between homosexuality and Christianity, you'll also see that there was a time where sins were actually graded at different levels, and being a male, in the queer community, we would say a bottom, but if you don't know what that means, it's when you're having sex, you're the one receiving, right? That was a heavier, worse sin than being a top or someone, the giver, right? Because the receiver is the quote unquote feminine role. So femininity was an abomination. It was a sin. It was looked down upon. I mean, how many books are in the Bible are written by men versus women? There you go. Well, at least the ones that were put there. I would love. I mean,
because we got married.
Right, there are other stories that are not. Yeah,
and we wrote about Ruth, but Ruth didn't write that. Okay, so I think that helps put things in perspective for us, right? Because even now, I won't say it's easier, but the penalty of being a lesbian woman or a bisexual woman is fetishized, right? Like, oh, we want to see that. That's a beautiful thing, but then we have our brothers who are going through this, or non-binary or trans people, who is like, oh no, how dare you take away, like, release your privilege of being a man to be with another man. And it's all of this vitriol because femininity is not seen as powerful and amazing and as in control and beautiful, right? And so for me, talking about the Bible literalism, when I was able to put it in the context of the writers, it helped me see who they were talking to, because they weren't talking to me, right? Why they were saying what they were saying. And if anything, is there wisdom in here? Is there ancient truth that was true 30,000 years ago that's still true today that I can glean from this scripture? For example, loving people is a truth that is always going to be true, right?
Yeah,
I don't need
period.
to have the Bible to tell me that, but when I see it in there, I can hold on to that. I can look at the love scripture in 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind. Is that a lie? No, it's not a lie, right? Those are ancient wisdom. That's ancient truth that if I'm able to integrate into my life will cause me not only to be like a beautiful, amazing person in the world, but will also protect my heart from the opinions of other people and their judgments. Because I'm not coming to get anything from you. I'm just here to love you, and that's okay, right?
You're also talking about loving yourself.
Right.
And we see that Jesus said, love your neighbor how? Love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Right.
And I love, my takeaway from this is that as you love yourself is almost an afterthought. Like Jesus says, like, of course you love yourself. To me, that is the most Christ-like thing you can do is love yourself. Fill up your cup. When your cup overfloweth, that which comes out of your cup is for others, but you have to fill your cup up first. For some reason, we get into this place of martyrdom where we're taught to just not love ourselves, and that is an act of pride and arrogance as opposed to an act of Christ.
Totally agree.
So you are in a place of more confidence. We've gotten there.
Yes.
And now, again, like as I said before, like I think a big part for me of Pride Month is celebrating the community, to look at you and to look at me and to celebrate our differences and to bond with our sameness and vice versa as well. So I want to ask, in the spirit of pride, what does pride mean to you?
Pride means what you just explained about loving ourselves. And we are taught that pride is only arrogance, right? Like thinking you're more than other people. But pride is also thinking you're less than other people, because all pride is being self-centered, right? It's all about, I'm comparing myself to you. So whether you're like, I'm the worst thing in the world, you're being prideful. If I'm like, I'm the best thing in the world, I mean, it could be true, but it's also pride, right? But actually esteeming yourself at the level that God esteems you is how you really walk in the same pride that Jesus walked in. Because when they called Jesus the Son of God, he wasn't like, oh no, that's not me. Please don't say that, right? She was like, no, that's exactly who I am. Exactly. My dad knows who I am. You don't know me yet, but you're about to find out, right? This is me. And so most of the time what we're going to find is that our esteem of ourselves is not at the level equal to the level of the esteem God has of us, because God sees us creating in the image of God, right? Like what is God's esteem of God's self? Are you at that level? Right? And so walking in pride for me is what I heard God say to me in that moment when God says, when are you going to accept yourself? Because I made you this way. This is your superpower. It's in celebration of who I am in the eyes of God, and working toward seeing myself similarly and esteeming myself similarly, right? Because that's not me abasing, and that's not me saying that I'm better than anyone else. That's saying I'm freaking amazing all by myself, and I can own that, right? And I can walk in that and be powerful in that, and that's okay. And God wants us to step into that, because can you imagine if Jesus came on scene and said, oh no, I can't heal. I can't go ahead and turn this water into wine. Oh, please, I don't want to show this power. It's too much. I don't want you to see it. Like, please let me just be in like this fake humility that we sometimes see around here. No, Jesus says, this is who I am. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to heal. I'm going to deliver. I'm going to turn this water into wine. Okay, I'm going to walk on this water because I am the Son of God. I know who I am. Right? I am that I am. Come on now.
I love how much you humanize Jesus, and I love how I find the more I love my queerness, the more I feel seen and loved by Jesus, and I view Jesus as a human, and I love that. I love what you're saying, because Jesus didn't say, "Oh no, you can't. Oh, I can't. Oh, don't make me sing."
Yeah.
There's this Kristen Wiig SNL skit where she goes, "Don't make me sing, don't," and she'll play the piano and then she'll start singing. It's like, no, Jesus says, "This is who I am, and I love who I am, and I want you to love me, and I want you to love like me." Oh my God, what a great conversation. Yes. Thank you for this.
Thank you. This is awesome.
It was awesome. Where can people find you? I'll make sure that I post your socials in the show notes as well. But if people want to reach out to you, if they want to hear about your coaching services, where can they reach you? And also, if you want to talk about your offerings, please do.
Sure. So you can find me on all the socials at Coach Yeamah. And then you can find about the program at confidentlyqueer.com. We have a course where it's education only, or you can do the group program. If you want to work with me one-on-one, you can apply to do that. But the way to start that conversation is to slide into my DMs on Instagram, and we'll see if we are a good fit to work together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love the way you put that. Apply. I started having people apply as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, reach this level. Just so y'all know, it's Coach Yeamah. I will put that in the show notes. Yeamah is Yeamah.
Yes.
But you can reach her there, and I love alliteration, so I love your website as well, confidentlyqueer.com. Yes. And I guess I do want to end with one question I ask a lot of other queer people. There's one person that's listening to this that's moved by you, but they are still living in that place of fear and resistance, whether that's in the closet, whether that's maybe their side B Christian who, feels, yes, I'm gay, but I don't think it's okay to act on it. Wherever they are in their journey, they're in a place of fear, and they're not even ready to reach out to you. What would you have to say to that one person?
I would say go and read 1 John 4:16-18. And specifically, I think it's verse 18 that talks about perfect love cast out fear. And so before reaching out to me or going online to find out whatever you're trying to find out, right? The goal right now is for you to know who God is, the nature of God. And so there's fear present is because the Bible, that scripture says we fear because we think that we're going to be punished, right? But perfect love casts that out. And so if there's still a fear of being punished for who you are, and God is saying that I perfectly love you and you should not be experiencing any form of fear because there is no fear in love. And so the work then is to find out how loved you are. And so if that becomes your primary pursuit, right, you'll get to that. For me, I was able to come to a place of affirming myself through God because I was fully persuaded that I was loved by God. And so that's the foundation work. And so for me, with my clients, when we work together, they think they're coming to get all of the verses of how, being queer is okay and God's affirming of you. But the real work is we're getting to know who God is for real, right? And so have that be your pursuit. And then once you're comfortable that you know God and you're clear that it's God speaking to you, then you can have the harder conversations about your identity, whether you're sexual or gender identity with God.
For real.
In love.
I love how that is a perfect example of an ultimate truth that you find in the Bible that you were talking about, that fear, that love casts out fear. Y'all, as a reminder, if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to like this and share this podcast. And if you're interested in my 10-week program designed to help gay men, gay, bi, trans men free themselves from shame, you can email me, eric@lifecoachingbyfeltus.com, or if you click on the link in my bio on Instagram, you can apply for a free discovery call with me. Coach Yeamah, It's such a joy as always, and it's such an honor, and I'm so proud to be a part of this community with you. Thank you so much. Bye, y'all.
Bye.